Hello, hello, and welcome to Key Bar. This is Thembi, and today I'm so excited to be speaking with award-winning playwright, director, and actor Psalmayene 24. So, Psalmayene 24 is an award-winning playwright, director, actor, currently the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation playwright in residence at Mosaic Theater Company. Playwriting credits include Monumental Travesties, Dear Maple, and Les Deux Noirs at Mosaic Theater Company, Out of the Vineyard at Joe's Movement Emporium, An Eloquent Fugitive Slave Flees to Ireland at Solus Nua, Free Jujube Brown at the African Continuum Theater Company, and Zomo the Rabbit, a hip-hop creation myth at Imagination Stage. Directing credits include Tempestuous Elements at Arena Stage, Good Bones, Flow, and Passover at Studio Theater, Necessary Sacrifices, a radio play at Ford's Theater, Native Son at Mosaic Theater Company, Word Becomes Flesh at Theater Alliance, and Cinderella the Remix at Imagination Stage. His plays, Les Deux Noirs and An Eloquent Fugitive Slave Flees to Ireland, are published by TRW Plays. His solo play, Free Jujube Brown, is recognized as a seminal piece in hip hop theater and is published in the anthology Plays from the Boombox Galaxy by TCG. Acting credits include Ruined at Arena Stage, Dear Maple at Mosaic Theater Company, and HBO's The Wire. Psalm, as his colleagues call him, is the writer and director of the short film The Freewheelin' Insurgents, presented by Arena Stage. He is the recipient of a Helen Hayes Award for Outstanding Direction of a Play and has received the Imagination Award from Imagination Stage. He is a member of the Dramatists Guild of America, the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society, and Actors Equity Association. And you can catch up with him on Instagram at PSALMAYENE24. Welcome, Psalmayene.
Thanks for having me, Tembi. Appreciate it.
I'm so happy to see you. So happy to talk to you today. So let's just jump in. Let's start at the beginning of your artistic journey. What was the first art form that you remember experiencing?
Uh, dance. Dance is the first art form that I remember doing, and that's actually primarily how I identify myself. I identify as a dancer first and foremost. I mean, I was the young, child, the kid at the parties, the family parties, dancing while all the adults would be, watching. And then as I went to school, elementary and junior high school, I was, part of the group of kids who would do like, popping and waving. I mean, this was like back when hip hop was emerging. So that was like my entree into hip hop culture too, was really as a dancer. Um, and then the other arts, sort of followed after that. Got into acting and performing, and then eventually became a writer, and then eventually stumbled into directing. But yeah, dance is my first love. I mean, I still dance at home in the living room or whatever. But yeah, I'm a dancer first and foremost.
And you grew up in Brooklyn, New York, right?
Yep, yep.
So
So
I was gonna just ask, like, do you feel like the fact that hip hop was born in the city of New York, that has something to do with your connection to that form?
oh, 100%. I mean, it's like even before folks really started calling it hip hop, it was just life. It was just creativity. I mean, just like riding the subways and seeing graffiti on the train, and then certainly in school, you know, banging out beats on, lunchroom tables, and going to block parties and seeing not only kids dancing, but then seeing kids like performing. And then like, I mean, like Houdini performed at a summer camp that I went to, like in elementary school. So it was
That's
just part,
crazy.
yeah, it was like one of the counselors like knew one of the members, and then they came and just like performed for the campers. And this was when they were like big and like known. So of course the campers, we went bananas. We lost our minds. But it was that kind of environment that I grew up in. So um eventually when I started doing like theater, it seemed like a natural thing to then begin to merge, hip hop with theater. Uh, so yeah, I was just kind of part of that first wave of hip hop theater artists who really were committed to exploring and experimenting with the combination of those two forms.
You talk about merging hip hop with theater. So hip hop is definitely a theme that comes through in your work, right? And sort of a lens that you use to see the world with. What other kinds of themes are emerging through your work that you see when you look back at your body of work?
Yeah, identity is a big one. Blackness and what it means to be black in America is a huge is an obsession of mine. I mean, it's something that I think about just about every day. I mean, as a black man, moving through the world, I mean, blackness seems to inform so much of how the world, views and then tries to treat me. So that's something that I include in my work. And then just really this idea of moving outside of your current circumstances and sort of having a vision for something and then moving towards that vision, I think is also a theme that's in my work. Yeah.
Okay, you're a playwright and a director, among many other things. Playwriting is a more solitary role than the role of directing. That's more collaborative. Can you talk a little bit about the artistic tools that you use as a playwright versus the ones that you put into play as a director?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean as a writer, certainly you're leaning on certain techniques of storytelling in terms of character and obstacles and action and you want to have some sort of arc to what you're writing. For me, there always needs to be some sort of personal connection to the story and to the material so that I have the fuel to, power me through the writing process. If I'm not invested in what I'm creating, then it's going to be kind of tough for me to finish writing a project. Now that I'm saying it, I mean, many of the tools are really the same when it comes to playwriting and directing. I mean, once you get in the rehearsal room in terms of directing, then you're dealing with other human beings. So you're dealing with the management, for lack of a better term, of people. And then you're really dealing with like psychology also, because ultimately you have to lead a team toward a particular goal and get everybody on the same page also. Um, one place or one thing that's different about the two, I think, is like how you problem solve, where when you're writing a play, I mean, you can problem solve on your own and you can literally, sit down and solve problems inside your head. When it comes to directing, oftentimes you have to problem solve with other people and you have to be comfortable with confrontation, and that doesn't need to be, doesn't mean a bad sort of confrontation or aggressive, but you have to be able to engage other people and not be and not shy away from that. Um, so I mean, ultimately, I guess it boils down to like that solitary act of writing versus the more communal act of directing. Although, as a director, I mean, early on in the process, I'd love to do research for plays. So even as a director, I'll do research, and then that part of the directing process is solitary. But then once you start to get into design meetings and certainly rehearsals, you're dealing with folks even in the audition process and like choosing your team, choosing your ensemble of actors. I mean, you're in dialogue with these other people in various ways.
I like that. I like how you broke down the differences and the similarities, how it just kind of flows together. And it sounds
Mhm.
like from what you're saying in your process, especially that it's not solitary for long.
Right, that's right.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so right now you're the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation playwright in residence at Mosaic Theater Company, yes?
Yep.
So, what does it mean to be an artist in residence? How does that particular position at an arts institution or an educational institution, how does that contribute to your growth as an artist?
Well, I mean, just in its most elemental, state, it means that, I get paid to write. I get paid to be an artist in the most, distilled and essential sense. So, I mean, with the residency now, I'm actually in my second term of the residency. So each term is 3 years. And you get a salary, you get health insurance, and more than anything else, you just get the time and the space to write and to think and to dream and to imagine. So oftentimes, I mean, that's what artists really need. I mean, aside from like, you know, funds, money to support yourself, other than that, I think most of us really just need like the pressure to be taken off so that we can come up with these, creative and unique ideas and tell the stories that are really in our souls to tell. So, I mean, at its most basic, that's what I do. But more specifically, each for each term, the theater that each artist is in residence in, in my case, it's Mosaic Theater. Um, they have to produce at least one of your plays per season. So the first term, they produced my solo play, Dear Maple. The second term, they produced my play, Monumental Travesties. And then they actually just produced a like a community project that I envisioned, which was the H Street Oral History Project, where the theater actually commissioned three other playwrights to write plays based off interviews that the playwrights did with people who lived in Washington, D.C. along the H Street corridor in 1968 during the unrest that happened after King's assassination. So we actually just closed out that festival and that reading of those three plays this past weekend. Um, so I mean those are the types of things that I do in the residency, and then it also gives me like the freedom and flexibility to then do other projects. I direct quite a bit also, so baked into the residency is that time and knowledge that from time to time I'll also be doing other projects, whether that's directing or if a TV or film opportunity comes up, that's also kind of, structured in.
Thank you for explaining that. I think a lot of people don't know what being an artist in residence entails. So I appreciate that explanation. And I think it's really interesting that you used your opportunity to enhance the careers of other playwrights. So that's really incredible. All right, let's start talking about talk a little bit about some of your projects. I want to start with Free Jujube Brown.
Oh yeah.
What led to the creation of that piece?
So wow, you're going back now. So Free Jujube Brown was created during a time when I was primarily acting. And honestly, I just wasn't really happy with, I wasn't satisfied with the roles that were available for young black men my age at that time. So I figured I would just, try writing instead of complaining. I thought to myself, what can I do to actually empower myself? Uh, so I created that solo play. Uh, and then that actually led to other writing opportunities. And then, really, you know, uh, led to me falling in love with writing. I mean, before then, I didn't really think of myself as a writer. Yeah, I just thought I would go ahead and give that a shot. And then eventually the writing opportunities led to directing. So things sort of organically snowballed from from one thing to another.
That piece, it in DC, New York, the United States theater world is such an important benchmark foundation, cornerstone of hip hop theater. And when you say what led you to create it was you decided that there weren't enough roles for people like yourself, and you decided to create them. Now, how many times do we hear people say, this isn't right, that isn't right, I wish it were better? What was the what's different about you that makes you go, I don't like that, I'm going to do something about it?
Yeah, I think it's my upbringing. My family's Jamaican, and I saw like my grandfather, rest in power, was a man who he only had a sixth grade education. So he had to drop out of school in the sixth grade to help his family, to help support his family. And then he eventually came to this country and I mean made quite a good, a good life for himself and for his family, ended up owning a bunch of properties and, you know, did a few, like he tiled, but he was a landlord and he was a photographer. So he kind of, jokingly, he fits into the Jamaican stereotype of having like doing like a million things,
All the jobs.
all the
Yeah.
jobs, but really
Hmm.
it's just doing what you have to do and not really complaining and not blaming anybody else. That's not to say that you're not aware that there are obstacles along the way. Um, but you know that it's on you. Like we all have one life, so either you do it or it will not get done. Um, so yeah. So I think that's one thing. And then just like my creative spirit in terms of just wanting to try creative things. So I mean, you know, writing really started out um as a means to create a role for myself, but it was also fun. It was a different art form. So I said, oh well, I'll try that. And then it also became about empowering my community because then I realized, oh, like when you write roles, then these are actually jobs for not only actors, but then when you write a play, that's, someone has to direct it, so that's another job, and someone has to, they're designers, so they're more jobs. A theater has to produce it, so it becomes really an opportunity for the community too. So then I kind of started to look at writing in a different way and as sort of my contribution to the revolution and to the struggle. Like that's what I can do. And then also just looking at writing as a way to bring people together, all people. I mean, as a black man, I mean, I'm always thinking about my community, but then ultimately, I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood in Brooklyn. I grew up in Park Slope, and on my block, I mean, it's like across the street for me, Polish family, up the street, African Americans, down the street, Puerto Ricans, we had the drag queen also down the block, and then Jewish. I mean, so it's Caribbean folks next door. So I saw like it was like the United Colors of Benetton. So that's really ultimately when I create a piece of theater or any kind of art, I'm thinking about bringing together everyone ultimately, even if the story that I'm telling is through a very specific, Black lens.
Okay, okay. Director, actor, playwright, job creator, community builder. Okay, I got
Yeah, yeah.
it. Les Deux Noirs. You reimagine an interaction between Richard Wright and James Baldwin. Uh, can you talk about what led you to that and how you approached the creation of this artistic moment that's based on a real life relationship?
Yeah, so right before I was actually directing a production of Native Son at Mosaic Theater, and the artistic director then, Ari Roth, was looking for a piece to be in rep with that show. There was a piece that was scheduled to be in rep, but for whatever reason, that piece wasn't able to be in rep. It wasn't ready or whatever. And then, Ari was asking me, "Hey, well, you're directing Native Son, and you've been doing a bunch of research around that play. Would you be interested in writing sort of a piece that would run in rep, a companion piece with to go with Native Son?" So I thought about it, and then, I said, sure, why not? As if I didn't already have enough on my plate because I was already directing one piece. But in my research, I came across James Baldwin's criticism of Native Son in his book, Notes of a Native Son. And I was really struck by what Baldwin had to say, and then just by his writing and him as a person. So the idea for this play, which is a reimagining of a meeting between James Baldwin and Richard Wright at a cafe in Paris. um, I had stumbled across this article that described this meeting, and then I used that as my launching pad to write that play. And I mean, it was just awesome just to really create that world and live in that world with these two titans of literature. I mean, in many ways, they are like the fathers of all Black writers who come after them. Uh, so yeah, that's how that came about.
You talk about examining a moment between titans of literature, but then I think about an eloquent fugitive slave flees to Ireland, a different kind of titan, and that's an incredible title, by the way.
Thank you.
So what led you to that journey, and can you talk a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, yeah. So that piece is about Frederick Douglass's 1845 trip to Ireland. This was after he wrote his autobiography, and there was just a lot of heat on him. So he needed to leave the country really to be safe. I didn't even know that Douglass had gone to Ireland. Um, but I was approached by Solus Nua, uh, their artistic director, Rex Doherty, approached me to see if I'd be interested in writing half of a project. So that play is actually half of the Frederick Douglass project. There was another play written by Deidre Keenahan, an Irish playwright, that in operates in tandem with that play. So my play takes place on a ship as Douglass is crossing the Atlantic, and then Deidre's play takes place once Frederick is in Ireland, and we actually wrote them separately, but they actually work really well together. Uh, but yeah, that was something again. I did it because I didn't know about the history and Douglas, just to learn about more about Douglas and to really get into his psychology and his spirit. I mean, to think about him being born enslaved and having spent a good many years enslaved, and then what he was able to kind of achieve is beyond inspirational. Like we have no excuse. We have no excuse. If this man could do what he did back then certainly we can do some big things now.
You seem to take joy in the research process when it comes to your writing. So it sounds to me like not only are you creating work to help other people understand through your lens certain historical figures and historical moments, but that you're also getting something educational out of it and enriching your own understanding. So that's really interesting that you take these projects on with this kind of opportunity and choice. So let's talk about monumental travesties. It's a play that addresses a particular statue in Washington, D.C. And you chose to create a comedy piece that examines something that really troubles you, that's troubling. Can you talk about that process and why you chose to bring humor to that
Yeah, yeah.
story?
Yep. So yeah, it's inspired by the Emancipation Memorial, which is a statue of Abraham Lincoln standing over a crouching black man in a, loincloth with sort of, broken shackles on him. And it shows a black man in a very demeaning position. And you know, it's right in Capitol Hill. Uh, and I had seen the statue, literally like decades ago, and it has always bothered me, So I decided to write this play using that statue as a jumping off point. And I thought, because it's such a troubling monument. I mean, there have been like protests around the monument to bring it down, and there was actually a an identical monument in Boston that they eventually they did take it down. So it's like there was enough outcry in Boston for it to come down, but because of the like location of the one in DC, it's on like federal property because it's like a public park. So just the logistics and the obstacles that you have to sort of jump over to bring that down are greater than the one in Boston, which was in sort of a different location. But anyway, I decided to make that piece of comedy because the subject matter was so heavy and it was so serious and so fraught that I thought the best way to approach that issue and that subject was actually to make people laugh. I thought that'd be a good way to sort of disarm people so that we could then really talk about this very serious topic. Uh, but yeah, I had a blast writing that and really had, fun with with just watching audiences see that play and experience that play. And honestly, as a result of creating that play, I really learned that each play has its own function, and each play wants to do something else. And you have to just let plays do what they want to do, still shape them and refine them and all of that. But every play, just like everybody has its own DNA, has its own sort of thumbprints. And you have to respect that in terms of how you design the play and the dramaturgy around the play too. So yeah, that's how that came about.
now I want to just have a separate episode where we unpack your whole entire body of work. I want to give it like another 10, 15
Yeah,
years and then we'll draw this arc. So we're gonna put a pin in that so we can come back and talk about that. Because I want
yeah,
to talk about all of your work. But I want
that's
to
right.
now shift to you and how you move through this space. So as an artist in theater, you have traveled all over the country and all over the world. What have you learned about the arts ecosystem and the theater ecosystem in particular in various regions and countries in your travels?
Oh wow, man. Um,
And we can start with other regions and then we can go to other countries.
yep. No, but I think ultimately, you know, people are the same wherever you go. We all want very similar things. We all want to be inspired. We all enjoy laughter. We want to be respected. We want to be loved. And I think the greatest art, I think, really touches those universal yearnings, those universal characteristics of humanity. I mean, I think about like, we did Dear Maple, my solo show about my relationship with my estranged father. We took that down to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I mean, it's a very specific, like, it's very much about New York, like Brooklyn specifically, and then DC. Those are really the main two locations in that play. But the folks in Santa Fe, they related to it and got it as much as the DC audiences got it, you know. So I think if you create art that at least strives to connect with those universal impulses, then I think you're onto something. Yeah, I mean I've done theater working with youth in India and Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ultimately, I mean, from my overseas travels, I've certainly learned that, all people want to be respected. All people appreciate peace, you know. And it really, honestly, my trip overseas gave me a excuse me, gave me a different perspective on race too, and sort of what it means to be black, what it means to be American. I mean, you hear about artists who, like Baldwin and Richard Wright, who traveled to Paris, and all those jazz cats who talk about Paris and how it's just different over there, and you're treated differently as a black person. And I definitely experienced some of that when I went over to Croatia, especially. And for those of us who maybe haven't really, those black folks who haven't left the States, there is such there's a weight that we carry that we don't even know we're carrying because we're so accustomed to it. So once you go to a country where it's not necessarily about that all the time, then you get a different perspective on what it means to be black, and then really what it means to be American, because then you're really looked at as an American too, more so than you're looked at as an American when you're in the actual states. So that was really interesting too in terms of just perspective. But yeah, I mean, people, we're all the same. I mean, we may speak different languages and may eat different foods, but at our core, we want and value the same exact things.
Do you feel like what you learned about people and about yourself as a black man, as an American in those travels, do you feel like that goes back into your work as an artist?
Certainly. I mean, and even at one point, even in Dear Maple, I started to write like a monologue about my trip over to Croatia, and then eventually decided not to put that in. But I started to write it, like, so I did start to think about it and start to think about like how that could, inform my work. And I'm sure at some point I'll probably, write something about it and put it out, whether it's, a monologue or an essay or something. Yeah.
Your writing and your directing choices definitely include place-based narratives and explorations of historical figures that are significant to you and
Mhm.
to us. What draws you to those kinds of stories, the place-based and the historical figures? Is that connected to your love for research? What kinds of motivation do you have for that?
Love for research and then love of anything that's novel and love for anything new, particularly like when it comes to like Black culture and Black history. Like I just directed Tempestuous Elements over at Arena, and that's about Anna Julia Cooper, who is known as the mother of Black feminism. And I knew nothing about this woman until I read the script. So that's part of what attracted me to that project. I mean, here's this woman who was the fourth Black woman in the world to ever get her PhD. She got her PhD from the Sorbonne when she was like 62 or something like that. Wrote an early treatise, A Voice from the South, in the late 1800s, where she really spoke about the experience of being both Black and a woman in a way that nobody was really speaking about it at that time. And it's really known as like the first sort of rigorous voice to really talk about that dual experience. But like to just get the chance to share her story with people, that excites me. I also love just playing with like form as an artist, like outside of just blackness or anything like that. I mean, just like the form of theater. I think that's also what excited me about hip hop theater, because ultimately it's experimental theater. That's what you're doing. You're playing with form. How can we incorporate, you know, emceeing or lyricism with theater? How can we incorporate movements, a different movement form with theater? So in many ways, I think of myself as a formal experimenter, as much as an artist who's invested in shedding light on Black stories.
So you think of yourself as a formal experimenter. What do you think about the role of theater and the arts in our society? Do you connect how you see yourself in this work to that, or is that separate? How do you see the arts as functioning in society?
Yeah, I think the arts are supposed to push us forward in some way and make us uncomfortable, to show us sort of a different side of the coin, to show us just a different perspective. Supposed to shed light in the dark corners of society and culture. I mean, I think our responsibility is really to provoke, to be provocative, to create beauty, of course, but it's to remind us of our humanity and to also connect us in surprising ways too. And I think that's also part of it. Is we're creative people. We're not supposed to do the same stuff over and over and over again. We're supposed to, look at new ways of doing things. I know they say, nothing is new under the sun, but I think the artist's job is to keep searching for that newness. Whether or not we get to it or not is one thing, but I think our function is to really inspire people and try to make a more sane world. Try to make this world just a more beautiful and humane place to live.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
You coined yourself Psalmayene 24
Yep.
early in your career.
Yep.
When you look back on that moment when you decided to have us call you that,
Hmm.
um, how do you feel that act of self-definition has impacted your work?
Yeah, I think what it does for me is it just sets a certain bar where it's like, okay, now you can't go back to doing basic stuff now. I mean, just based off your name alone, dude, like come on, yo. So it's really like a reminder to always to push for the radical, like to be yourself, be creative. I mean, I created that name when I was in a band and I was in my early 20s, and folks have stage names and all that, and then I decided to bring it over to theater because I didn't see theater artists really doing that. So it was a way for me to just really, bring some imagination to not only my work, but even to who I am. And then also to really blur the lines between art and reality and really kind of, shake things up a little bit. We can't do the same old humdrum, thing all the damn time. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. So you talked about directing a play, Tempestuous Elements by Kia Corcoran, I
Yep.
believe.
Yep.
And so Black woman playwright,
Uh-huh.
focus on Black women,
Yep.
Black male director.
Yep.
Can you tell me what was special about that kind of connection, as a Black man being able to really put your attention on Black women?
Yep. No, great question. I mean, I thought it was an honor. And to be quite honest, initially I said, well, am I the right director for I mean, I'm not a Black woman. Should a Black woman be directing this? And then the more I, read the play and thought about it, it's like, no, actually, I believe I am the right person. And I think it's important for Black men to direct the work of Black women and vice versa. It's important for Black women to direct the work of Black men because if you handle it with responsibility and sensitivity and care and ultimately love, then I think that says something about what it means to be in relationship with, Black woman or a Black man. But no, I mean, in directing that piece, I thought about my mother, I thought about my sisters, I thought about my wife, I thought about all the Black women in my life who I love the most, basically. And then that's where I had to go to that place of really like deep love. So that's really what drove me through that process. And then just again, hopefully we can get to a point in our industry and in our world where it doesn't matter who directs what play. We're not quite there yet, but I think we can take like responsible steps in that direction. But yeah, no, it was an incredible honor to direct that piece. And in many ways for me, that piece was like a Valentine to all Black women. And that's certainly how I approach the work.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what's next for you? What are you excited about that's on the horizon?
Yeah, so right now I'm in pre-production for a couple of plays. The next one that's coming up is Metamorphoses over at Folger. So we go into rehearsals soon, early April, and then we open in early May. And then I'll be directing the Colored Museum at Studio after that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that piece as well.
So wait a minute. So a classical piece
Uh-huh.
and then a satirical piece.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So like a big epic sort of sweeping historical piece and then a very specific Black centered, like race centered piece. Like
Yep.
are you going to be doing those things at the same time?
No, well, pre-production is happening simultaneously, but then once I'm in rehearsal
Okay.
for Metamorphosis, then I'll be mostly, I'll be focused on that. But I mean, it's important to say that with Metamorphoses, I'm also like that will be done through a black lens also. So you're dealing with these myths, but then I had to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that resonates with me and that still feels soulful. So there's a very specific way that we'll be doing that production that connects with that. Yeah, and then I'm still writing. I'm working on a musical about John Lewis. So that'll be that's with the theater down in Atlanta. So I'm writing the book and lyrics for that.
That's incredible. I love your choices. I love your ideas. I love the point you make that it's always going to be through a black lens regardless.
Yep.
And I feel like that connects to what you said about wanting us to be able to direct anything we want and just accept, we all can accept like, okay, this is coming through this director's lens and then that newness that
Yep.
you talked about. Okay, what happens when you see it through my eyes? What new insights do you gain? So that's really interesting. And I mean it. I want to be able to look at your body of work another 10 years. I want to be able to really see what was happening. So we have to come back 10 years from
Yes,
now.
indeed. Yes, let's do
Okay.
it.
And we're
Let's
just
do
going
it.
piece by piece by piece. And we are breaking it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm excited to see what will happen.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. The legacy is still going. We're not done yet.
yeah,
So I
that's
just,
right.
oh my gosh, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. This was such a great conversation.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate your work. I look forward to your next projects and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Really appreciate it. Enjoy talking to you.
All right, till next time.
Peace.
Keyboard is produced, written, and hosted by Tembi Duncan. Theme music by Psycho Sid. Visit us on Instagram at keyboard_IG.